So when we think about intermittent fasting and we think about going for 12 hours or more without food, like I said, I recommend 13. If you want to just do a way to start practicing intermittent fasting, please don't eat past 8 p.m. and then don't eat until after 9 a.m. So that's a 13-hour intermittent fast. It's not that hard. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Energetically Efficient Show. I am Kristen Rowell, and today I am so excited because we're going to be talking about fasting. Now, if there's one question that I had more than anything from all of you when I started this show, it was, I want to hear more about fasting. I want to hear more about fasting. So that's what we're going to get into today. So I'm going to do as deep of a dive as I think is appropriate in this, in a episode that is not too long and sciencey because I don't want to lose you. So I really want to give you the most valuable takeaways so that you can decide if fasting is right for you, when you might incorporate fasting, and how you could use it to improve your metabolic health. Okay. So the first thing I want to start with is, what is fasting? Because it's a term that is thrown about so often. And a lot of people, when they talk to me about this, they're like, well, Kristen, it's so hard for me to not eat for 16 hours. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean 16 hours? Why do you think you don't have to eat for 16 hours? That's a myth. So let's start by talking about what fasting is, which is fasting is not eating anything for 12 hours or more. That's it. If you are 12 hours or more, you are intermittent fasting. And I say intermittent fasting because we'll get into what fasting beyond intermittent fasting is. So like what longer fasting is. But if you stop eating at 8 p.m. and you don't eat until after 8 a.m., congratulations, you are fasting. Okay. What I like to do with clients when they hire me is I try to get them on a 13-hour fast right from the get-go. I don't do anything longer than that in the beginning because the reality is most people have a hard time with blood sugar dysregulation, and they really need to start to regulate their blood sugar first before we get into any longer fasting, which may be 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours or more. So when we think about intermittent fasting and we think about going for 12 hours or more without food, like I said, I recommend 13. If you want to just do a way to start practicing intermittent fasting, please don't eat past 8 p.m. and then don't eat until after 9 a.m. Or if it works better in your schedule, and this is typically what I do, don't eat until after 7 p.m. or don't eat after 7 p.m. rather, and then don't eat until after 8 a.m. So that's a 13-hour intermittent fast. It's not that hard, especially if you're like me and you wake up early in the morning and you just go do a workout fasted. Now, the whole topic of working out fasted is a sticky wicket in and of itself because there's so much controversy, especially for women, around whether you should train fasted or not fasted. But here's what I will tell you about that, you guys. If you have any measure of excess body fat, or if you're someone who has practiced intermittent fasting, I promise you, you can train fasted. I have run for years. I mean, we're talking more than 20 years in the morning, whether it's running, lifting, whatever, in the morning with no food in my system, and then I can eat after. It is not true unless you are practicing a certain specific athletic sport that you need to have a significant amount of food before you eat. Now, some women might notice a training benefit if they have a small amount of calories before they go to the gym, before they do their morning workout. And if you want more research on that, or if you want to read more about that, I do recommend following the work of Stacy Sims, Dr. Stacy Sims, who's written a couple books, both of which I've read, that are fantastic. One is called Roar, and one is called, I think it's Your Next Level, or maybe it's just Next Level. And this is more about women training in menopause and perimenopause, which is really good. But if you have excess body fat, it really is unnecessary for you to eat anything, consume anything before you're training. And so the majority of people listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, are going to benefit from not consuming food before they train in the morning. And you can consume food after, and that's fine. And why is this? Why, when we talk about fasting, what is it that's happening in the body? And why do I recommend that you can go and work out in the morning without food? Well, what I want you to know is you have 4 different fuel sources, okay? 4 fuel sources. And we're going to go through what each of those 4 fuel sources is. And it's important to understand this for fasting because I want you to understand what your body is doing when you start fasting. Okay. I want you to understand the mechanism of action that's happening. Like, what is your body tapping into, and why has intermittent fasting become all the rage, and why is it so good for you? So we're going to talk about those 4 fuel sources right now. So the first fuel source, the number one fuel source that our body has to utilize and consume and get rid of first, okay? So the primary substrate that most people are walking around using all day for their energetic expenditure is, you guessed it, carbs. Okay, so that's glucose. So carbohydrates or glucose is our first fuel source. After we've gotten rid of the glucose, after we've utilized all the glucose storage that we have, we're going to tap into our second fuel source, which is dietary fat. Okay, so our first fuel source is carbohydrates or glucose. Our second fuel source is dietary fat. Now, if you listen to my episode on macros, you may be like, oh, I know what the third fuel source is, Kristen. You may be thinking in terms of macros because, of course, our 3 macronutrients are carbs, dietary fat, and, of course, magical protein. But guess what? Protein is not a fuel source, and that may be confusing for people. But the reason protein is not a fuel source is because you cannot store protein in your body. Cannot be stored. We can store glucose and we can store fat. In fact, we can store lots and lots and lots of fat. And as we store more carbs and fat together, we just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we put on body fat stores. If you want to learn more about that, I recommend that you listen to my episode, Why We Get Fat, because I go into an explanation of how carbs and fat together get stored on our body in our adipose tissue, and that's how we put body fat on our body. So going back to fasting, remember the first fuel source that we have to burn is carbohydrates. The second fuel source that we have to burn off is dietary fat. And the third fuel source that we utilize once we run out of carbs and we run out of dietary fat, the third fuel source that we use for energy is body fat, okay? Body fat. So I say this to clients, and please, 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 you guys know that I say this from a place not of judgment whatsoever. I'm saying this as a factual matter because I want you guys to understand that your body fat is a source of fuel for you. So what I tell clients is, especially if they have a tremendous amount of weight to lose. I mean, I work with clients who want to lose 10 pounds and clients who want to lose 100 or more pounds. And so what I tell clients who want to lose 100 more pounds is I say, listen, when we get into fasting, when we get into some longer term fast, which I don't do with them right away, I help get their blood sugar very regulated. And then we work on doing some longer fasts over time. I say to them, I want you to think of the fact that you have a freezer full of food, or let's say we have Costco full of food on our bodies, and we're not going to go back to Costco. We're not going to go back to the grocery store. We're not going to go back and buy more food and put it in storage until we clean out the freezer first. Think of it as we have a deep freeze of food or a freezer of food, or maybe we just have a small section in a freezer of food on our body, depending on how much body fat we have. And we want to burn through some of that before we put more in storage. How many times have you over the course of your lifetime cleaned out your freezer and been like, oh my God, how long have I had this in here? Like for me, when I moved from Minnesota to Nashville, yes, I cleaned out my deep freeze. I got rid of a lot of stuff I had in there that had been in there for a year or more that I just didn't need. The same is true for our body. We want to periodically get rid of the excess fat stores that we have in our body, get rid of them. This is so important for our metabolic health, you guys. And so we want to go through periods where we do a challenge or a fast so we can clean out that excess body fat that we have. We can use it for fuel. We can use it as a fuel substrate to fuel our body. And then what I'm going to do next is get into the fourth fuel source with you. The amazing byproduct of burning body fat off of our body is we produce this fourth fuel source, which is called ketones. This is literally where the term the ketogenic diet came from. And just so you know, the term ketogenic, like that label for the ketogenic diet, has been around for more than 100 years. We celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the ketogenic diet in 2021. So this has been around since 1921. That's when the term was coined. And fun fact for all of my friends in Minnesota, it was coined by a doctor actually at the Mayo Clinic. So at that time in 1921, and what ketones do for our body, I'm going to do a whole different episode about ketones because I just love the topic of ketosis so much. But the important thing to understand about ketones when it comes to fasting is ketones are an alternative fuel source for your brain, okay, that are alternative to glucose. So yes, our brain runs on glucose a lot of the time, but the superpower when you are really working on what I say is all 8 cylinders or all 12 cylinders, forgive me, I'm not a car person. This is something I should probably ask my father about. However many cylinders you can have in a car that makes it a super souped up, like well-run engine machine, that would be your ketone fuel. So when your brain runs on glucose and only on glucose because you never allow your body to get into a state of ketosis, you're going to over time experience brain fog, sluggishness. You're not running as the well-oiled machine when you never let your body get into ketosis and you never let your brain run on ketones. Okay. So I want to just go back to these 4 sources of fuel for you again, just to do a quick recap, because I think it's helpful when we're learning anything to hear it a few different times. And I want to add on one little tip for you here as I go through these again. So remember, our first fuel source, the one that your body would have to burn off first when you consume it, is carbohydrates or glucose. Our second fuel source that comes after carbohydrates or glucose that your body is going to burn off in the next order is dietary fat. This is your avocados, your walnuts, your olives, your olive oil. And of course, I'm giving examples of healthy dietary fats because those are the fats that I want you to consume. Coconut oil, beef tallow, fat of any kind from animal sources or fat from plants, just not the fats that we get from seed oils. I'll talk about that in another separate episode, but it's really the good fats that I'm talking about with dietary fat. So glucose or carbs is first, dietary fat is second, body fat is third, and that's hidden in all sorts of places in your body. And then fourth, the byproduct of burning body fat is your body will produce ketone bodies for your brain, and that is another source of fuel. You'll also notice when you start to lose body fat, and some people experience some sort of interesting detoxification symptoms, you are engaged in some kind of detox when you are losing body fat, when you're fasting. We store a lot of toxins, you guys, in our fat cells. Toxins love to hide in fat cells. They're in our adipose tissue. This is why when you go through my 2-week cleanse, which I offer a few times a year, so just pay attention to when I make announcements about that because it's called the Radiant Reset. I love this cleanse. I do this myself multiple times a year. I really want you guys to consider joining me sometime and experience what it's like to get rid of some of those toxins out of your fat tissue because it's part of the reason you feel so much better when you detox because you're literally getting rid of toxins that are stored in your body for days, months, weeks, and of course years, especially when you hold on to body fat for many years on end. So weight loss can be a detoxification for your body because of where those toxins are stored in our body. Okay, back to fasting. So once we've done a 13-hour fast for, let's say, a few weeks on end, we may be ready at some point after that to say, okay, I want to try a little bit longer fast. So this is what I did when I first started fasting. I first started fasting in around, I think it was about 10 years ago in 2015. And by the way, the reason that fasting became popular around that time, you'll remember, fasting started to become all the rage in around 2012, 2013, 2014 were the early adopters. And then between 2015 and 2020, it seemed to be everything like all anyone was talking about in the health space, in the metabolic health space. And then it's only grown from there. And the reason for that is in, I believe it was, and I got to fact check myself on this, you can certainly Google it. I believe it was in 2012 that a Nobel Prize was awarded to a Japanese scientist for the discovery of something called autophagy. And I'm going to spell that for you so that you know what that word is. Autophagy, autophagy. And that is a Greek translated word. Auto meaning self, phagy meaning eating. It's the process of self-eating. That is a process that our body undergoes when we are in a fasted state. It is a cellular cleanup state. It is an excellent thing for your metabolic health. It's when we start to get rid of the old, decrepit cells in our body and the stronger, healthier survival of the fittest cells start to eat those old, decrepit cells. This is why fasting is so amazing for cleaning up any cancer cells we have in our body. And newsflash, guys, we all have them. Everyone has cancer cells in your body. It's just a matter of how much they've proliferated, how many you have, and whether you are now in a diseased cancer state that we label in Western medicine as stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, or stage 4. So if you want to avoid cancer, which, hello, I'm one of those people that would like to avoid it, you want to have some kind of fasting practice as a part of your life. And if you have active cancer, you want to engage in longer fasting practices to really clean up and get rid of those cells and allow your body to engage in cellular senescence. You want to have autophagy happening in your body. And a visual way that I like to think of autophagy, which I came up with, which is just how I picture it working in the body, is autophagy is like, and this is going to age me and date me, and I don't care, it is like Pac-Man. So if you've ever played Pac-Man on the old video games, or maybe you've been at somewhere where they had the old school Pac-Man machine, it's like Pac-Man. The Pac-Man is going around cleaning up all of those old, diseased, decrepit cells, because fasting is a super strategy that allows you to become survival of the fittest. You get rid of that excess body fat. You get rid of those cancer cells. You get rid of the disease cells. You get rid of the toxicity. It really is a superpower for allowing you to live long and age well. And of course, get rid of those cancer cells. So we're engaged in autophagy when we're fasting. Now, because the discovery of autophagy has only been around for 10 to 15 years at the time of the recording of this video, which is in 2025, we don't know a tremendous amount about it yet. You know, I always say science takes so long to catch up with what we do anecdotally in our own practices. So I'll tell you what the lay of the land is now when it comes to the scientific understanding of autophagy. So I mentioned to you already that we are intermittent fasting when we've been not eating food for 12 hours or more. We think, and I say we think because I don't think this is solidified yet in the science. Some people may challenge me on that, but I'm pretty confident based on everything I've read that our best guess at this point is that we start to burn fat, that we start to burn body fat around about 16 hours of fasting. Most experts believe that somewhere between 18 and 20 hours of fasting is when autophagy starts to begin. This is when we start to engage in the cellular cleanup, the cellular senescence process happens, and where we're really eating all of our dead, decrepit cells and really starting to give our body the benefit of reducing the cancer risk in our body. So that happens around 18 to 20 hours, and autophagy just keeps ramping up. And then once we hit 36 hours, and I want to tell you what a 36-hour fast is, because this is one of my favorite fasts. I really love the 36-hour fast for metabolic health, for prevention of cancer, for body fat loss, for increasing all of our brain-related factors, meaning like getting us into ketosis, getting our brain to start working on all 8, 12 cylinders, whatever you would say, Dad. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not really the car gal. So let me take a sip of water here. Okay, thank you. Water with electrolytes, of course, which I'm always drinking. I'm recording this in the morning, by the way, and this is, of course, my second one because I drank one of them while I was on the treadmill. And yes, by the way, guys, I should say this, I'm still fasting. So here I am recording this. I'm purposely fasting because I want my brain to be as acutely focused on what I'm telling you and what you're learning about as possible. Okay. So when we are getting to the 18 and 20 hour part of the fast, that is when we believe that autophagy starts to happen. And then we get to that 36 hours. And I told you I'm going to tell you what 36 hours is. So I'll do that in a second. But 36 hours is when, wait for it, our autophagy goes up by 300%. Okay. So this is like, wait a second. If I want to really get the benefits of fasting, I want to try to do a 36-hour fast at some point because I'm going to get so much cellular senescence and so much benefit from a fat burning standpoint, an anti-cancer standpoint. And let me tell you, you guys, when you do your first 36-hour fast, you're going to feel like Superwoman or Superman. It's such a powerful thing to be able to do. So what a 36-hour fast would look like is you would fast, let's say you would eat dinner on Sunday night. I'm just going to pick Sunday because a lot of people fast on Mondays. You would stop eating by about 7 p.m. and then you would go to bed. All day Monday, you would not eat. You would go to bed. You would wake up on Tuesday and you could eat anytime after 7 a.m. So a 36-hour fast is from 7 p.m. one day to 7 a.m. a day and a half later. So 36 hours is a day and a half. And that would be a fast that you could work your way up to after practicing intermittent fasting for a while. So when we have a 36-hour fast happen and autophagy goes up by 300%, that's amazing. And then the other thing that we believe in the science is at 48 hours of fasting, so that would be 2 full days, okay? At 48 hours of fasting, HGH, so that's human growth hormone, that's going to help your muscles, HGH goes up by 500%. That's insane. So HGH is going up by 500%. Oh, I should have mentioned, which I forgot to tell you, when you fast for just 13 hours, HGH is going up a little bit. So when you fast for 12 to 13 hours, HGH increases. So what I would do is I would stop eating at, let's say, 6 p.m. at night, and then I would go to the gym in the morning and I would do a lift at like 6 a.m., 6:30 or 7 a.m. And I knew that my HGH was going up at that time, right around the time I'm working to build muscles. So that's just a little hack if you want to try that. But HGH goes up by 500% at 48 hours of fasting. And then autophagy peaks. This is what we believe in the science so far. Autophagy peaks at about 72 hours of fasting, which is a 3-day fast. So I will do a full separate episode for you guys at some point about my 5-day fast experience. I've now done 2 5-day fasts and they were incredible. And I can't even tell you how amazing I felt on day 5 of my fast. I had done several 3-day fasts before I worked up to a 5-day fast, by the way. So I do not recommend it if you're not a practiced faster, but I'll do a whole episode about that. Okay. So just to provide a quick recap on what we've talked about with fasting so far, intermittent fasting is 12 hours or more. You are still intermittent fasting at 16 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours, 24 hours. Once you get past 24 hours, it's considered longer fasting. So a 36-hour fast would be a great thing to try after you've worked up to it. And the reason that we want to do this, you guys, is we want to burn through that body fat after we haven't been eating for a while, because your body's going to run out of all the glucose that you've been eating. It's going to then run out of all of the dietary fat that you've eaten, and it's going to start to tap into your body fat stores and then start produce ketones for your brain, which are such an amazing source of fuel. If you want to ward off Alzheimer's, if you want to ward off dementia, if you want to ward off any neurological related dis-ease, I really recommend that you consider adopting a fasting practice, because it will allow your body to start producing ketones, which are so neuroprotective. They are so brain protective, which is a superpower. Okay, I think I want to just share one more thing. I could talk about fasting for hours and hours, but let me just tell you one more thing. Some of you may be saying, it's so interesting, Kristen, because I didn't grow up learning anything about fasting. I mean, I certainly didn't. There was no one in my life that fasted. My parents didn't fast. My teachers didn't fast. Relatives of mine didn't fast. Coaches of mine didn't fast. You know, people at Sunday school, you name it. Any adult in my life never fasted. Why? Because we have been programmed, certainly for those of us who were born in the 70s, and I'm going to talk to you also in the 80s or 90s, for sure those of you born in the 60s, 50s, we've been programmed that we need to wake up and eat, that we need to have lunch, that we need to have snacks all day, that we need to eat dinner, that we need to have a bedtime snack. All of this is programming. None of this has anything to do with science. The word breakfast means when you break your fast. It's the first meal that you eat of the day. And I don't care whether you're eating that meal at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., noon, 2 p.m., or 6 p.m. at night. That is your breakfast. There was a push to get us to start seeing boxes of cereal with toast and orange juice as quote unquote breakfast. That push and that programming was by powers that don't have your best interest in heart. They don't have your metabolic health at heart. That's not the intention. It was to get you to buy things like their cereal. It was by Post. It was by Kellogg. There's such a sinister story behind all of that, you guys. But what I'll leave you with in this is I want you to start paying attention to your own intuition and your hunger and satiety signaling when it comes to food. Work on every time you eat, consuming at least 30 grams of protein, getting some fiber in your meal, getting a good amount of healthy fat, and then carefully adding carbs only at the end of the meal, whether it's a piece of bread or some crackers or something with carbohydrate at the end of the meal, only if you're still hungry. Okay? Because the reality is you can balance your blood sugar so well and become a fasting superstar if we just get your macros dialed in first. So go listen to my episode all about macros, then listen to this episode about fasting. I will have another deeper dive coming for you on fasting part 2 in the next episode, and I will see you then. Thanks so much for being here, and I appreciate you being part of my community and watching and listening to the Energetically Efficient Show. Thank you.